Always good to be closer. This is a session called Filming the Unfilmable. Sometimes I feel that a lot of documentary is about making the unfilmable real, or making difficult ideas real. This session we've got two films, one of which is at the festival, one of them isn't. Both, in my mind, really, really remarkable films. First, to my right is Carl Javér. Carl is the director of a film called Reconstructing Utøya. He will tell you, for those that don't know what Utøya was, in a little bit. And that's being shown at the festival. It's being shown this afternoon, is it not?
2 o'clock.
At 2 o'clock. So he'll be rushing straight off after this session to that, and doing a Q&A at after the film. And then next to him is Collete Camden, who is the director of a film called Married to a Paedophile, which was shown on Channel 4 in September last year and won the Broadcast Magazine Award, Broadcast Awards for Best Original Programme, which is kind of like all genres together, I think, isn't it? And again, that's a really striking film. The reason that we're talking about both of those is because both films use very particular techniques, devices, in terms of their documentary storytelling, to film something and to tell the story of something which otherwise you might not be able to show on television. Or at least deal with. So both films are very challenging, and I should say, they deal with paedophilia and Utøya, which was a massacre of young activists on an island in Norway, and the bomb explosion the bomb attack in Oslo, which preceded it. Both are very challenging subjects, and I would just like to say, if anybody here is affected by the subjects, by those subjects, or by how you see them portrayed on screen, please just make us aware of it. Talk to your neighbour in the audience. Don't just keep it in. Some of these things are difficult. I often feel that we don't, in documentary, don't talk enough about that, of the effect of these films on the audience, and you are the audience. So I've said that. I think I wanted to first start for both of you to briefly say what the films are about, and what the challenges were in why you then had to use this particular technique. So I want to start with Carl. Tell us briefly what Utøya was, for those that aren't so aware of it, and then why you needed to make the film in the way you've made it.
The terrorist attack at Utøya in 2011 was, of course, a complete shock for most of the world, but for Norway it was really intense, and it followed a really intense period of how to relate to this subject and how to portray it, how to talk about it, how to not talk about it. And me and Fredrik, the producer, we talked. We were actually in London when it happened. I remember we were here doing a research trip, and ever since we've been talking. How can you film this? And I actually felt for a long time that it was unfilmable, because at Utøya 69 kids were shot dead, 200 were wounded. Out of those 69, 52 were shot in the head. So it was a brutal attack on democracy, brutal attack on the society, and it kind of broke all the contracts we have between humans. And Norway is, I'm from Sweden, but Norway is a small country, and so extremely a lot of people were personally or had neighbors or friends were affected by this. But I felt the need to make a film about it, and one of the needs was to actually to turn the grip of the story out of the terrorist, because he's been very much in focus of the media. So I wanted to turn the story from him and to the survivors, and let them be the tellers of the story and the ones who carried the memory.
And you've the film. We're going to see a clip in a little while, not straight away, but in a little while, and the film follows 4 survivors,
yes.
4 young survivors of that attack who were obviously a little older now. 7 years on from the attack was when you made the film. I think it was 6 years.
Yeah.
So they were very young then. They were 15, 16, I think, weren't they? And other young actors. So it's as the title says, it's a reconstruction, but in a very particular way.
And I would say when I understood it was possible to do was when I connected. I was working with the method for another project of reconstruction, and when we put these two together, the Utøya and the method, then I felt it was filmable, because the method is basically in a black studio with no props, white gaffer on the floor, where the survivor puts out the geographical aspects of the island that is important for their story, and with the 12 young Norwegians that helps them, and I would say the key point for why it's possible is that they choose a representative for themselves. So they start with choosing somebody who acts them.
And we'll come to that and maybe set it up again when we see them do that process. But let's just turn to Collete and try and set up again the context of a film on paedophilia, which I was just actually looking. I mean, the film is still on all 4, which I think is brilliant of Channel 4 to keep it up there, and Brink the Films, who are the producer of it, to have it up there for so long. And on the site it says 100 families or 100 people a week, it says, are convicted of, is that right? No, each week over 100 wives learn that their husbands aren't all they seem, as police charge ever more men for having child sex images.
And it's one of those things where actually behind the statistics, they assume there are so many more. I think it's over 100,000 men a year, mostly men.
And it's an extraordinary number, and a subject which to everybody is, you'd say, beyond the pale, and so widespread. But I don't know if we'd call it a taboo subject, because it is obviously covered in the media, but it is really hard to make films about, let's say, for a wider audience on television, isn't it?
But I think the point originally was to find out what it's like as a woman being placed in a frankly impossible predicament. So for both the women that were the main stories, they had literally overnight, discovered this about their husbands, and had a dawn raid with the police coming around and seizing computers, taking everything of theirs as well as their husbands, because they are targeting the address. So, and then it's the ripple effects of how they deal with that and how they are now caught up in the shame of it.
And you're describing this as if this is like a documentary where we're following the characters and they're telling their stories, and you're seeing them through this, following them through this period. But that wasn't possible in this case, was it? Because the 2 women in the film, you weren't able. They didn't want to have their faces shown. They didn't want to be identified.
And couldn't be really. Even if they toyed with the idea that maybe they could be on camera, actually the reality for them and their families was that the threat vigilantes was just too high, and so you're not only protecting yourself in that situation, it's the kind of jigsaw effect of everyone knowing who you are. So they were on board first of all, the two main women, and Liz Oljati found them and had a good relationship with them, and they went to Channel 4 with the contributors. But with the sort of, how are we going to make this work?
Yeah.
And actually it was Nick Mursky, who was head of documentaries, who came up with the idea that, yeah, you're right, they're completely, you know, you can't put them on camera, let's try this rather unusual, risky form, and have actors replace them and keep the sound, so all the sound is original documentary, but then cast actors to come in and mime the words, be them, and film it in entirely different locations so that the contributors are protected. So from that, we took that back. That's when he brought me on. We went to meet them and started recording with the wives. Took that to them, and through that process, we then started to ask about the rest of the families, and through that started conversations with the husband, Alex, and their daughters. So, you know, it grew from there.
And this, I mean, this is this lip syncing technique, which I suppose we need to call it. There's a film called The Arbor, which was at Sheffield, I'm sure, a few years ago, 3, 4, 5, even 5 years ago maybe, which used the same technique, but maybe in a non-naturalistic way.
Yeah.
What I found extraordinary about the film is that it is extremely naturalistic. It looks like it is a documentary, and I think maybe we should see the beginning of the film now to set it up and give people a sense of what's happening. So again, remember, all the audio you're hearing is the real people, but none of the people you're seeing are real. They are all actors. So can we play the first clip, please? So the opening explains the technique to the audience, and then it's never mentioned, is it?
Yeah.
And what was what did you feel about
that? What were we
that?
thinking?
Yeah.
We did think about it, about whether or not we should remind people, particularly after the ad breaks, and actually quite quickly dismissed the idea because we just felt that you know, the form is one thing, set it up and then forget about it, because the story's got to stand for itself, really. So, you know, you don't want to sort of look for plaudits for the kind of cleverness of the form. It was more, you're either going to be gripped by this story and be engrossed by it, or you're not. So.
Excellent. I think I want to crack on, because I want to get a sort of discussion going between the two of you about these working with actors. So I'd like to move on, and Carl will show the first clip of one of the sort of main characters, the survivors of the film, who's called Raquel. And there are a few subtitles again for people at the back, but I'm just trying to think. It's maybe not essential what she says. It's the way it's what she's doing in the room. I think it'll be clear. If not, we'll explain it a bit afterwards. So let's show that next clip. But just briefly say who are we have the survivors, and then who are the actors? Are they professional, well-known actors?
We have the 4 survivors, and then we have 12 young Norwegian people. They all gone through kind of a 1-year actor school or preschool for acting. Right. And because it was important that they understood that you can step into a role and you also can step out of a role. But most important, they were chosen because they had an interest of understanding the event and supporting the survivors. So they all had like a social impulse to be of service. Yeah.
To do it. So let's play that the clip of Raquel, then the next clip. So I'm very sorry that is, and that's, you know, my fault, I think, for not being aware of how unreadable those subtitles were, and also how difficult it is to see them at the back of the room. I think the principle for me of the whole film is that people are finding ways to represent their own story. Raquel, you know, she didn't have as Carl said, she didn't have props or anything. She had to go and find something and do it and express the sound in that way. So would you call it acting? Was anybody acting? Or I mean, you use the word reconstructing, I suppose, rather than acting.
Yeah, I think part of the understanding, but while developing this project, was that it was extremely important for the survivors to take control of their own story, that they were in charge of the story. So during the sessions in the studio, it was important, for me it was important that they had really free creativity to use this method.
Yes.
So it was a collaboration, but also it was important for me as a director to let them loose. Because they are reconstructing a memory where they had no control in 2011. So it was important that this filming process became kind of a different, how would you say it? This time they had control over the situation. This time they could control it. They could control the shots. They could control what they wanted to explore or depict, and in a safe environment. So we also worked with. I mean, we had a psychologist on set all the time, and he also watched everything we did in the studio. We streamed it out to 2 monitors, so he was there present watching it. So working with the psychological security was extremely important in this project.
I can imagine. I mean, both, as you say, for the survivors, but also for the actors who are representing them, and representing others around their story. I think you said to me that you have an understanding of psychology because both you and Frederick are married to psychologists.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And were there dangers in reconstructing this trauma?
I mean, we were very cautious, and it's also important. I mean, we had a psychologist that was deeply involved into the process, but it was never a therapy session. The aim was not therapy. The aim was to make this filmable and to tell this story. And I think the survivors were all, from the beginning, it was important for them to tell their story. And so interesting enough, I think that because of that, there were positive outcomes of their kind of how they relate to this event now. So they all came out with something that they felt was important for their process. Yeah.
Can I just ask, did the psychologist tell you that there was anyone there that you shouldn't work with?
With the
kids?
With the kids,
Yeah.
No. But I also said, like, if you feel you want to break the filming, you are free to do that.
Yeah.
So he had, but
The psychologist?
The psychologist, yes. But that never happened.
Yeah.
So, Collete, in your film, obviously you're dealing with actors and presumably the 2 women and others around the story. They only saw what they'd done once you'd finished it. Yeah. So I suppose that was a different kind of responsibility as you were making the film. Did the actors, it must be quite a technical challenge for the actors who were playing those roles.
Yeah, massively.
How did they respond to it? And was it easy to find actors to do it and cast them?
Yeah, in a way, it'd be quite good to be able to say it was impossible, but actually actors love doing it. Well, we found that, when we set up the casting sessions, because it's so difficult, it's so technically challenging for them. They have to not only get all the swallows and breaths and the absolute rhythm of it, but they have to time that as well with any kind of movements that we've caught on sound. And we found very early on, because when we were recording, we kind of thought we probably need a sort of clean as possible master interview, so that our dubbing mixers didn't get cross with us on the other end. So it's like, let's get it really clean. But actually that was, it had a sort of sterility about it. So kept it much more flowing and actuality sort of driven where we could. When the actors came in to then replicate that, they literally have to pull the coat hanger out at the same time as saying the exact word, and also get the whole demeanour right. So it's like someone said it was like that thing that you do with the tapping your head and rubbing your stomach thing. You
can't do two things at the same time. I'm not going to try it.
So incredibly difficult, and they had to have the audio broken down into little segments and learn it over weeks. So they learnt it like music. They never sort of read it off the page. They just learnt the rhythms.
Interesting. I mean, as I say, a real technical challenge. I mean, wanted to show the second clip actually because although it's quite a small moment, this is it Helen?
Helen.
Who's collecting her husband from prison, and it's, if you like, it's a documentary moment that you see in many films. And you really have to pinch yourself to realise that it's not real. So let's play that next clip. So I just felt that was really sort of finely shot. Actually, it was the shooting of it that I was thinking of because it's how you would want to shoot a documentary scene like that, not to get too close, give them the sort of distance, and it matched the audio perfectly.
Yeah, completely. That's Patrick Smith.
Sorry, who's the DOP?
Patrick Smith.
Patrick, big shout out for Patrick Smith, the DOP on it.
He's brilliant because he does cross the drama and documentary. He straddles both. But with that one, I think it's partly also because if you were doing that as a drama, you wouldn't script her sort of accidentally knocking the horn.
No.
She's flustered, and it's and I think also the fact that you don't get a reverse shot, you never kind of get around the back of Robert to see Helen arriving because you just wouldn't. We didn't on the day, you wouldn't get that. So we were quite strict about it.
So exactly, you were doing it as a drama shoot, but with entirely, the documentary intentions to direct it and film it.
Completely.
And also perhaps with the audio recording. You were doing it like a documentary. I suppose.
Except that you sat in the car with the iPad with the playback, and she's got to get the indicator at the right time, and she's got to hit the horn at the right time. So took a while.
Lovely. I think your microphone might be just slipping. If you just want to shift it up a bit. I'm just thinking about showing the second clip with Mohammed. That might be a bit tricky because of the subtitles. Is that going to make?
But I think maybe you can live translate.
That's all right
if it's needed.
Because I'm sorry that the subtitles are a bit unreadable. Because I would like to if you like look at the way in this second clip we're seeing another one of the survivors from Reconstructing Utøya and Mohammed. It's the process of choosing somebody. That's what we see at the beginning. So each of the survivors could choose anybody, male or female, to represent their story. So that's what we're going to see. And as I say, forgive me for telling you what they're saying over the clip, but I'm just really aware that the subtitles are going to be unreadable, even if you're quite close to the front. So let's play that next clip. So Carl, just tell me about you said the actors who were taking part, and we saw many of them there. Obviously the woman representing Mohammed, but then there were others around them. How did they all work together as a group? You said there was a lot of solidarity with the survivors.
Yeah, I think also Utøya was a political camp, or is a political camp for the Labour Party, and it's young kids coming together, getting to know each other, and the filming process became also that, because we were a group of people. Most of them didn't know each other, and they got to know each other during this process. So that was important, and of course they are also important because they are like the middleman between the survivors and the audience, because it's basically. The survivor is sometimes hard to relate to because they have been through such an extreme event. But the reactions of the participants, I would say, support the audience to empathize and understand
Right.
what's happening.
I mean, it was the reactions of them on the, that I could see they were. Sorry, my feeling about the film is it's an intensely, if you would, emotional, troubling, traumatizing event. But actually, there's a lack of emotion which makes it even stronger.
Yeah, and also I think when you take away images, like here, it's just a black room. It also forces the audience to make their own images inside their heads, and I think that this kind of there's a power in this kind of visual silence or removal of stimuli.
I mean, in your film as well, Collete, I don't recall seeing graphic images of children. Are there any?
No, none. There's one graphic description, which is quite late on, and it's actually very difficult to know what to show on screen at that time because it's so appalling. And actually, we went for something very bland in a way. Similar way, we just went for street shots that to carry it. But yeah, that was the only time because really it was so much more about how they're dealing with the repercussions of it rather than focusing in on the actual crime.
Because in a way, it's the story and the subject that is unfilmable rather than what's happening. I think Utøya, as I say, it was the 22nd of July. It's been represented in dramas, or there has been one, I think, by Paul Greengrass, who's at the festival as well. And I know there's a Norwegian drama series coming up.
Yeah.
But how have people taken to this way of doing it? In other words, to do it in a, if you like, undramatic drama. How has the audience so far responded to it?
Yeah, no, in Norway, we had because of the sensitivity of the project, we had a lot of work with showing the film for survivors and for mothers and fathers who lost kids on the islands. We had screenings, 10 screenings in Norway, where we invited people who had a relationship to the event, and it was very strong screenings, but they all felt it was healing in some way. And I know some of the survivors who didn't. They actually saw the film and said, "I want my own reconstruction. Right. I have this need to do this also." And I also had in Oslo. I had a screening with where one mother who lost her daughter. She came to me afterwards and she said, "When I watched the film, I wanted Mohammed, because Mohammed describes he saw the assassination of 3 kids." And she said to me, when Mohammed described that, I wanted him to walk further down the beach to describe what happened to my daughter. So there is also this need. I mean, it's hard things to talk about, but it's also this need to know and to remember. And I think film is, in that sense, is beautiful to be able to do that. And like the Greek theater was made because there were things they needed to talk about in the society that they couldn't talk about. So they put it on stage instead. And there we could see it. So it's something with film and the wordless. Film is not the language, but it's images that can make us speak about things we can speak about. So I think it's interesting. I think what you have done is extremely interesting. And I think there is also a wave right now happening in the documentary community where we kind of expanding our tools and broadening what's possible to tell, which of course has a British root in Peter Watkins and other filmmakers, which I find interesting.
Yes. I think I'd now like to move to questions and not show the last 2 clips, if that's all right, because I think there's probably a lot of reactions to what you've done or questions about the method. So if we can move to questions, who's going to be first? Somebody here in the front.
Thanks. I've got a question for Collete. So did you actually shoot with the original contributors to get the audio, or was it an audio recording? And also, did they meet the actors who were playing them? I'm just interested how that worked. Yeah. And then, sorry, one final question, which is just about aftercare. I was just worried, or just concerned afterwards how they dealt with, because even their voice, they can be identified.
Yeah. That's true. They can be identified. We were very aware that, although you're saying to the wider public, we're not having your names, or it doesn't look like you. Between themselves, obviously, they're a small circle, they can be identified. But the first bit of the question was. Oh yeah, no, sorry, yeah. We didn't take a camera anywhere near them, so it was just audio recordings, which was kind of a joy to do in a way, because you're not sort of stalling them while you go and get your wide shot, and it meant that it was much more relaxed. And although they always knew we were recording because we had quite good kit, I think they relaxed into it, and it was kind of quicker in a way. But the actors never met the contributors. They never saw a picture of them. They knew nothing about them. They didn't know where they lived or their names or anything. And even though they tried to do their in fact, they were quite good detectives at sort of picking up little nuances in accents to try and work out where they lived, but they didn't ever know.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. We might keep the aftercare question for a little later. I just want to see if there's another few thoughts. There is a question there at the back. Just behind you. Okay, go ahead. Can you hear me? Not yet. Or can we get another microphone? Where's the other microphone? I'm sorry, down the other end.
Thank you. My question was about the legal aspects. I wanted to know, did you have to get a legal team to clear your documentaries in case there was any admissions of any further crimes during the course of your filming, or perhaps if the participants refused to carry on with the documentary, or later on said they didn't want their voices to be broadcast? Did you have a legal team checking everything for you? Thank you.
So yeah, I think that's Collete, really, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. We had a lawyer for the independent production company, and then also Channel 4 lawyers. Were all over it. But no, in terms of the consent process.
Sorry, can I just say that is, I should have said that is the Sheffield 1 p.m. alarm. It's not actually alarming you to anything other than that it's time for lunch. Apparently it's a historical thing in Sheffield. It comes from a shop opposite, and I should have warned you. I wrote it down and I forgot. That's what it was. So yes, very heavily legal. Were there any legal implications in Utøya? I mean, the film was made after the perpetrator had been tried and convicted.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So in a way, there were no legal implications.
No, but there is always, of course, ethical issues more than legal issues, and I think they are extremely important. And of course, everybody had to, see the material. For me, it was important that the survivors felt good with the film. It was just I wouldn't have gone if they hadn't wanted to be in it. No.
Yeah. So you showed it to them. You showed the survivors the film before it was released.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just take 2 more questions. Can I have that lady there? There you go.
Just a question for Collete. How much artistic license was there in how you visualised the dialogue?
Actually, loads, because in a way it was sort of brilliant because you could move things around more, you had more freedom. So we spent, a good chunk of time with a blank screen and all the sections that we wanted to include with post-its on the wall. with Ben Brown, brilliant editor, structuring it all the way through. And sort of brilliant in that sense too, because there were two of us then with our heads on how can we transpose this audio into different sequences. So when you see, for example, Kate digging kind of angrily in the garden, she was just talking energetically on a walk. We just went for walks and she was particularly sort of, angry about everything. So we decided to make it look like she was digging the garden, but that sort of thing happened a lot. And then it was just how much can we get away with often. And we talked to Greg, who's here actually, our dubbing mixer, who spent about 30 hours then fixing it all, about how it had to feel like that was believable, or at least he had to then do all the work to make it believable.
Yeah, big applause for the dubbing mixer, I think, because it's a really excellent job. So I'm going to take one more question, then we'll break for lunch. Was there somebody down the front who I saw? Yes.
No.
Sorry, we'll just wait for the microphone coming along the row.
So this question is for Carl. How aware of the survivors, how aware are they of the process when they started? Because I imagine if you over-explained it, like the nuances between the young performers and the survivors, they would become self-conscious of the process, but to feel safe, they must have needed to know a lot about what was going to happen. Yeah,
first, when we presented the project, we put it out on a closed Facebook account for survivors, where I basically described the process, like in a studio, reconstructing with other young Norwegians. So I tried to be very open about the process they were going through, because they needed to, because then I wanted them to actually respond to me and say, I'm interested, can you tell me more, or can we meet? So for me it was important that they took the first step towards me, that I wasn't chasing survivors. So they knew very much what it would be. And then during the filming, we actually had two of the survivors, we had a pilot filming a year and a half before. So they'd gone through the process actually. And I was really worried that they would lose the tension when we did the real filming. But it wasn't like that at all. And I think partly because it's been a year and a half since they did it the last time. But also the intensity of their memories, I think, just brought them back again. So, but during filming, I also tried to keep it. I mean, we had this black box that we opened very kind of cautiously, and they went in and we closed it. So we had these magical spaces that we were very strict about, and I think that also created a tension which was good for the filming, I think.
Did you?
So,
she has a follow-up.
Oh. Well, look, I'm sorry. I'm afraid we do have to stop it now. So I think everybody needs some lunch. Carl needs to get to his screening as well. Round of applause for Carl.
Thank you.